What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. Let's go. What is up, everybody? What is up? What is up? I have got, I'm so excited. My favorite type of guest. So I have all these difference makers on. My favorite type of guest is the person that's made a difference in my life. And we have Christine Reyes in the studio today. And I was blessed to be able to meet Christine and be able to work with her side by side, and just how much I've was able to learn from her. It was just a phenomenal experience. And not only that, but so we got to know each other. And I remember sitting at a Starbucks and we're sitting and talking about her story. And she tells me, I don't know if I'm ready to be on the podcast yet. And what's so awesome, this is probably like 2.5 years ago now. So I love that. I've literally had this circle on my calendar for this amount of time. And so super fortunate to have Christine in, and excited to talk about the difference that she makes in the world. So Christine, welcome to the studio.
Wow. Thank you for that intro, Jason. It's an honor to be here.
Like I said, I've seriously had this one circled, and then we had it scheduled for the 30th, and I was like, I'm going, we planned to go to Vegas for my sister's wedding. And I was like, and so it ended up working out, I think.
Perfectly. Yes, absolutely.
So awesome. So tell everybody just a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So I am an integrator for companies that run on EOS. What does that mean? So there's something called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's called EOS, and it's made popular by the book called Traction, written by Gino Wickman. I first was exposed to it back in 2016 during a coffee meeting with someone new that had joined my networking group at the time, the Huron Valley Chamber. Shout out. And the gentleman was Rick Wilson, and he introduced himself as a fractional integrator. What?
How intriguing is that?
Right. I need to know more. So I think that was a strategy. So we went out for coffee, and I think we ended up meeting for over 2 hours. It was just one of those conversations that just changes the trajectory of your life. And during that conversation, he explained to me what EOS is, right? That was the first thing I needed to know, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And that is a 6 components to operating a business in a way that doesn't kill you. So it's building a business that runs itself. And having been a small business owner, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I grew up in a small business. We did production painting for the big 3 and for automotive suppliers. I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. And I went on to have my own small businesses across a wide variety of industries. And when he started explaining what EOS does and how it helps these small businesses, these entrepreneurial small businesses, these scrappy organizations, it was just eye-opening for me, because there were so many things that went really well. I was successful in all of the things, but my gosh, it could have been so much simpler had I had a framework like that. And that resonated with me so strongly that was, as he was explaining this. And then the next part was, what the heck is a fractional integrator? And an integrator in the world of EOS is that right-hand person to that visionary business owner. Many times the visionary, the founder, the CEO, they're the ones that have this calling. They have a vision that they want to see brought into this world. The thing is, they're not always great at making things happen like that, right? Even for a short time, they can be, but they usually need people around them that are the ones that execute on that vision. That's what an integrator does, is they take that visionary's vision, redundant, I know. They take
redundant but easy.
Redundant but easy,
yeah.
Right? They take that. They take that genius that person has, like that's their gift. They're able to see those opportunities and come up with those ideas. But they're not always great at building the plans to carry them out, or assembling the teams, or building out locations, whatever the next steps are. And that's what an integrator does.
I think a lot of light bulbs are going on right now as people are sitting. Like I have a lot of visionaries that listen, and so that they're probably like, oh, there's not something wrong with me? Because I think we take that on a lot. And we have all this stuff, and it's like then we beat ourselves up that there's something wrong with us because we're not able to put that plan into place. Oh my God, we had this idea, and then we went to go do it and just kind of fizzled out on it.
Yeah. And that's their superpower, is to be able to come up with the next thing. They identify opportunities. I love working with visionaries. They're so inspiring. And that my gift in the world is to be able to take those ideas and build plans around them and make them come to fruition and assemble the right people and put the structures in place and the processes and all the things that I'm sure every visionary is like, oh, okay. Not my favorite thing. So that's what I do, is I help that. So as Rick was explaining to me what an integrator does, it dawned on me that even though I had always been a small business owner, an entrepreneur in my own right, I was not a visionary. I was good at identifying an opportunity. So it was just the next logical progression in whatever I was doing. And I'm like, oh, look at that thing over there. I wonder if I could do that. Because I was a strong integrator, I was able to, build the plans, figure out the projections. Is it doable? Is the risk worth it? And take the next steps forward, build it out, make it profitable. And then I realize after that point, I get kind of bored when things are just cash flowing. And it should never be boring, should never be considered cash flowing. It's great. I love cash flow. But
I'm just here making this money. What do I do?
Yeah, so boring. But there was something missing. And this repeated itself in every business that I had.
The challenge wasn't there.
The challenge wasn't there. And I recognized that the part of business growth that a lot of people found stressful, like, oh my gosh, are we going to make it? Will I be able to build this team? Can I get enough customers or clients? Will we be profitable? I like that part. It doesn't seem stressful for me. It seems invigorating and exciting. And so it's like good counterpart to that person that's like, all right, let's go, let's do this. I love being able to fill that gap. So learning about what an integrator was the first part of it. Fractional just means that I help more than one visionary at the same time. So I work with 2 or 3 visionaries at a time to help them in their business. I lead the leadership team. I help get the company to break that ceiling, move on to the next level. And then I work myself out of a job. It's finding my full-time replacement, the dedicated integrator that's going to be able to step in and operate that business. So I look at myself more as like a builder integrator. Give me kind of that chaotic spot that you're at. Let me help bring some order to that. And then it can be passed off to the dedicated integrator that stays and operates.
I love it because we spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about building something that feeds into your strengths. And you're doing that, or strengths and like even just who you are, right? Yeah. Knowing that you get bored when you're just cash flowing, and that your whole goal on this is to work yourself out of a job.
Yeah, going into it, that's what's exciting about it. I didn't recognize that till I think it was like 2014. Don't know why it took me that long, but I'm glad that I did, because then during that conversation, I realized that day, it was like September 2016. Is that I was going to do what Rick was doing. And that I started my journey, I think a year later, and by 2018 was working with clients as their integrator in their businesses. Yep.
So how did that kick off? Like, when getting your first client, and then are you still running other businesses at the time?
This is one of those stories that I don't share often because I don't know. I know the place that it has in the world and the space that it occupied in my own journey. But I had a business that I had to close. And that was it was like divine intervention that happened, and it was funny. So back to that initial meeting, I ended up hiring Rick as my fractional integrator, I'd say mid 2017. So I started learning all about EOS. By the way, for those of you that are out there listening that you're hearing me talk about the visionary role, the integrator role, there is an amazing book called Rocket Fuel by Mark C. Winters and Gino Wickman that outlines all of that. So during that time, over the course of those 6 or 9 months, I started reading and really studying EOS, the book Traction, and I became more certain that that's what I wanted to do. And I just didn't know how was I going to make that shift? At that time, I owned Anytime Fitness in Milford. And Anytime Fitness in Milford was a club that I had purchased as a turnaround. So it was struggling. It had very few members. The previous owner couldn't maintain it. And I stepped in and thought, okay, this is again, the challenge.
Yep.
Right. I love the challenge. So it ended up being an amazing club. We built a super strong culture. I had a wonderful manager in place, amazing personal trainers. The members were fantastic. I belonged to the Huron Valley Chamber. It was the most fun chamber I had belonged to. Up until then, I had a totally different opinion of chambers, and it was just eye-opening. So all of these things were going great, right? And then in July, I decided to hire Rick as my fractional integrator because there were some pretty big things coming down the pipeline from Anytime Fitness. There were some changes to the club programming. There was an opportunity to offer more of a group fitness type thing, and I saw that was very in demand for our club. It had an amazing impact on culture just to bring people together around being healthy and well. So I was excited for it. And I brought him on because I wanted to run on EOS and I needed my right-hand person. I was acting as both at that time, which can be very, very tiring. If you're a visionary that's also sitting in the integrator seat, it is not the place you want to be. There's the very few percent, like 2% of people can do that and do it well. The rest of them just resign that seat, let someone else step into that really gets that and wants that. So with hiring him, I started to see all these amazing changes, and it made it so much easier to walk through that time of a lot of big shifts, a lot of decisions to be made. Then August 1st came around. I remember it. We got a FedEx letter and thought, this is interesting, overnight, and made a sign for it. Opened it up, and it said, your shopping center has been sold. Like, okay, if you've ever owned commercial space, that happens. I've been through that multiple times.
Yeah.
You just send your rent elsewhere, and
Yeah,
it's no big deal.
No big deal.
This felt the same, right? No big deal. The next day arrives, and I get another FedEx letter. And I remember my manager at the time started tearing up. And I thought, oh, why? And she didn't know why either. She thought it was like a feeling of foreboding. And I opened up the letter, and it said that the landlord was exercising the option to terminate my lease. Okay, well, that was, that's kind of a gut punch. And you have to know I'm an optimist. Like I will fight tooth and nail for what I believe in. But I'm also a realist. So I start off with that optimistic feeling of like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to go talk with my attorney. I want to see what this is about. And the more information I started to get, the more I realized that this was really going to be an uphill fight to be able to find another location. And that's why it was so important to have Rick with me at that time. Because as integrators, we are lovingly known as hole pokers and dream crushers.
Oh my gosh.
Because we're your counterpart where when you're
on your shoulder,
yes,
right?
Think of like the two voices. And sometimes we play devil's advocate, right? We'll ask questions because we really want to understand why a decision is being made, or if we're taking the right next steps, or are we really addressing the root issue? So wonder is one of my working geniuses. Like I love asking questions, and so does Rick. And I think the question he asked me was, so the amount of work that's going to have to be done to rebuild to where you are right now, which keep in mind, it was a turnaround club. So I had a lot of work into it. 3 years from now, you're going to end up being right where you're at now. Are you prepared mentally, emotionally, and financially and physically for all of that to be back in the same spot in 3 years? Because that's what it's going to take if you decide to open another location within your territory. And I thought about it for I think 3 seconds. I was like, well, when you put it that way, no, I don't want that. So it was with really a feeling of peace and clarity. I was able to do what I'd be shocked if anyone would have heard of something like this happening before. closing a fitness facility in an ethical manner,
Yeah.
not just putting a sign on the door and saying, "Ooh, we're keeping all your dues," or like
Yes.
selling memberships.
Oh my
up
God,
until
you hear about that so much.
You
People
do.
go to the gym and all of a sudden their gym's closed and their money's gone.
Yes, yeah, and they sell memberships up until the very end.
Yes.
And that was my biggest takeaway from all of this, is that even despite that adversity, because that was a big gut punch, I won't discount the feeling that came along with that. But at the same time, having a plan and having a clear objective of saying like, all right, my mission now is not to continue to operate and grow this amazing club, but rather to wind it down. So on the plus side, I can now help other people that are in that horrible situation find the bright side, and let's do it in a manner that works for everybody. So my employees, I help them find new gym homes. I made amazing references.
Yeah.
I even help members land at gyms that would suit them. It really was my team was amazing at that time, really working through that. And that meant a lot to me. So coming out of that, I think by October, we closed the doors for the final time. And that was a tough go of it. But I don't know where I would have been if I had not made that decision, and if I hadn't had the clarity that Rick brought to the table, just being able to really lean on that EOS framework and understand like where I want to be a year from now, where I want to be 3 years from now, 10 years from now. Those are the kinds of questions that we're asking. That's part of running on EOS. If I hadn't had that clarity, I don't know that I would have made the same decision. So thank God I found EOS because it made a big difference.
Well, and so I look at this whole entire, have you read the book, The Alchemist?
I have not.
Oh, read The Alchemist. And I love asking that question. It's like a popular question I ask in this podcast, and like 1 out of 30 people have read this book. It's a phenomenal book, but it really talks about like going and finding your personal legend, like your purpose, your passion, right? And it's not linear. You go through life, and sometimes you have these backward steps, or sometimes you find a good job, or you have a good business and things are operating, but these things are meant to be lessons, or they're meant to be there for a reason. And I look at the gym, and it's so funny because we were talking before we started recording, and you said, wow, 2016 is a big year. And you're talking about meeting Sergio. And then you start talking about, I met Rick in 2016. Yes. And I started putting it together, and you talked about the chamber, and then your impression of chambers before you were a member of the Huron Valley Chamber. And it just I think of like everything that's set up for your path right now happened because you went through this thing.
Yeah, it did. And the beautiful thing about that is anyone can walk into a situation like that tomorrow. You might be in a situation like that right now where you're going into a coffee meeting, or you're meeting someone for lunch, and it could be that meeting that changes your life. And you don't always know it at the time.
No idea.
No. And I have a strong faith. And when all of these things started happening in 2016, I was going through a divorce. I was building this business. I ended up then meeting my future husband, which as I was telling you before we went on air, as I saw my husband walking into the gym for the first time, yes, he came and signed up at the gym. I thought, like, what is this feeling? Like, it was something I hadn't experienced in such a long time. Like it was like a kindred spirit. And there was so much like that happened in 2016. So that when the hard stuff hit in 2017 with the closing of my business, and then having to change identities, that's something that can't be underestimated. And I've talked with many visionaries, many business owners that have exited one business.
Yeah.
Either, sometimes it's successful, they're selling on purpose, they want to do something else. Sometimes it's the business is failing, or it's not worth it to keep it going anymore. Even in the best situation, you still walk away from that. People have known you as the founder of this or the CEO of this. And now you're like, who am I? And that struggle is real, because I stepped out of this industry that I loved. and stepped into what? Like I was this brand new thing, an integrator, and I was going to work with clients and have a massive impact. But making that switch mentally was difficult. So I encourage people as they encounter those kinds of situations to just give yourself grace and really allow yourself to feel those emotions. But I did know throughout all of that, even the ugly crying parts. Yes, that still happens because it's hard.
Yes.
But I never doubted that there was something better beyond that. Like I remember thinking over and over, one door closes and another one opens. And I just kept praying for the next thing to be amazing and not even praying for it, but just like believing that it was going to be that. And 2018 came around. So the fall, winter passed. And then by 2018, I started working with clients as their integrator. And oh my gosh, I love it. This has been the most fulfilling thing I have ever done in my entire life. And I loved my businesses. I loved what I did. So to now be in a spot to just take in the fun and the impact that I can have and the teams that I can build, like I love it. I love every day.
And then what does that look like? And I think of Populist, for example, and just like still talking to Danny now and like getting caught up and like seeing him on the leadership team and like, where they're at. It's like so incredible. And I know you get so many of those experiences. And so what's that like?
It's proud and bittersweet.
Yeah.
So Populist is an amazing company. I was with them for, I think, right around 2 years. Started with them in September of 2020, right at the height of all the COVID fun. And
for a commercial janitorial company.
Yes, right. That was, but my gosh, that was such a fun time. Mike Eller, the president, he's become a really good friend. I have tremendous respect for him. And that's one of the cool things. I get to meet amazing people. Yeah. And the teams, and Danny's just amazing. Matt Eller, I mean, they've got a phenomenal team there, and their story's fantastic. You should probably have him on the podcast sometime.
I've had Mike and Danny both
good.
on. Yeah. Yep.
Good.
We should probably do a catch up though.
Yes.
Danny's one of my favorite episodes of all time. He's just.
I can't believe I didn't see it.
Yeah, it was during the time that we were with Populist. So I cut a bunch of content for them and they used the videos quite a bit. So that was awesome. But man, I just loved it. Yeah. Mike is a guy that they make the movies about in the TV shows, right? The patriarch guy that, doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. Like pushed his kids out as, Danny tells it like it is. Yep. And that's just, and you can see how Matt and Danny came about from Mike. And it's a really cool story. Really awesome to be around.
It is. And the bittersweet part of that. So I mentioned earlier, I work myself out of a job. Yeah. Because I am not their forever integrator. Reference back the point when things are running smooth, I get bored. You don't want me there when I get bored because I will make things exciting.
Let's go set this on fire.
Right. What can I do? So it's really about helping that visionary get their arms around the business. And I'm not implying that things are going poorly in a business. These are not struggling companies. These are companies that are growing well and consistently, and they're looking to prepare themselves for what's next. Like, it might feel like the wheels are shaking a little bit on the cart because they're gaining this momentum, this traction. They want to be prepared, and they want to make sure that their leadership teams are prepared for the growth that they're experiencing. So I go into it knowing that I'm going to work myself out of a job, which getting to know my visionaries and really understand what makes them tick and the truly understand their dreams and their visions is amazing. And I love making those things come to life. Then there comes this point where I recognize that, okay, we've gotten a lot of progress done. We've got the right measurables. We know the business is running well. We've got the right leadership team assembled. I think my time to leave is on the horizon here. So I start looking for my full-time replacement, my dedicated integrator, the person that I'm going to hand the reins off to and, help bring on board to this company that I've been part of now for anywhere between 9 months to a year and a half is roughly how long I stay with a company. Mm-hmm. and then facilitate that onboarding of that dedicated integrator, like finding that right person for that visionary, which is that in itself is complex.
Yeah.
Right. The right personality, the right background, the right experience for the company. Sometimes they need industry experience. Sometimes they don't. They have other relevant things that carry over. But they have to be that right fit integrator for that visionary. And then I help that transition happen. And then I ride off into the sunset. Whereas one of my visionaries says, "Oh, you're kind of like Mary Poppins. When your work is done, you open up your umbrella and you fly away." Like, okay.
I love that visual.
Shout out to Barry. Thank you for saying that. I'll never forget it.
It's a powerful visual for sure.
It is. But it's true. You finish working with that team and you've built these relationships and you're super proud. And there's been great times and there's been really difficult times and difficult decisions and changes. And you've been with the team through all of that. And then you're leaving. That's the bittersweet part.
Yeah.
The good part is like I can still maintain relationships with people, and I'm still there to support. So I don't drop off the face of the earth. I love to help.
I can totally feel that bittersweet feeling. I'm the same as you, where it's like I get that. I need to be challenged, or I need to change. I love the change. I love the change. And thinking about like even going back to a kid when my room got rearranged, or when I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to leave my room.
I did that all the time.
So I just moved furniture, right?
Yes.
To like bring back an energy and an excitement to me. And so Populist was like just great people in just even that leadership team growing from you, but then the full-time employees like Steve, and the people that you're just like learning and growing from, just being around. And so it's so cool to see them then transition and you leave, but just like at the same time, like, oh man, I miss that.
Yeah, I do. I miss them. I miss them, and I miss every single one of my clients. So it's not easy, but it's the role that I play. It's my superpower. So my underlying personal mission for all of it is to create positively life-changing experiences for others, or opportunities for others. And sometimes that looks like helping a visionary build a business that runs itself so they can finally take a vacation after 10 years of working nonstop. Sometimes it's helping a leadership team member truly embrace their role where they feel like they're killing it. It's awesome to see that.
So awesome.
Sometimes it's helping a leadership team member discover that they're not right for that seat and that they've been miserable, and that's why things aren't going as they planned. But they have the clarity at that point. And I've gotten thank yous for that because they were fighting it tooth and nail. Sometimes our stubbornness gets in the way, and they finally end up somewhere where they're happy in a role that they love, and difficult conversations have to happen, and that's part of my role, is being willing to have those.
How is that coming in? Because there's got to be like you're coming in new, you're meeting everybody. How is that integrate?
It's exciting. I love starting with new clients because I pretty much onboard myself, which is different than a full-time integrator, dedicated integrator would be, because I'm there for a set amount of time. It's finite, and I want to accomplish things. So I am very, very intentional about my onboarding. I want to know everything I can, the ins and outs of the company. That includes getting to know all of the leadership team members, the strengths, where are they struggling? What's their history with the company? Understanding the company vision, really at the deepest roots, like why are we doing what we're doing? Mm-hmm. Why does it matter? In the marketplace, how do you look different? And getting to know them at that deep level. When in any leadership team I've ever worked with, I also believe in giving people chances, right? So there's never been a situation where I've walked in and like day 2 made a decision and terminated someone. Yeah. There'll probably be cases where that might happen. I'm not ruling that out, but that'd be an extreme case, because one of the things that I know this, people aren't always clear on what the expectations are. And at the end of the day, people just want to know they're doing a good job. Yeah. And if they don't know what that is, what the definition of that is, I'm certainly going to provide that for them and help them in any way I can to get there. And sometimes you just realize, or they realize, that this job that is now crystal clear and laid out for them doesn't sound so fun. Those aren't the things that they like doing. And they start understanding that in the greater structure of the company, which in the world of EOS, we look at it called the accountability chart, which is a chart that shows every seat in the organization along with the top 5 roles and responsibilities that that person has. Sometimes a leadership team member or another person in the company will recognize that, hey, the seat over here, this actually looks more fun to me. And that's where I used to be at. And then I got these promotions and now I'm leading a department and I kind of hate it. Yeah. Like that's, and you've seen that, I'm sure, in the sales. Sales is where I see it the most, because you take your best salesperson and you promote them into the sales leader to run data and analyze like they're dying a slow death. They just want to be out talking to customers.
Yep.
Or if you come from like a technical background and you were the one doing the work and you loved it, you want to go back there. So sometimes it's helping people realize that. But that's all part of the me onboarding myself, is really getting to know the client, the ins and outs of the company, walking the floor if it's a physical location, talking to people. That's always exciting.
I love that. I love how you said that, because like people don't want to go to work and suck. They don't want to like suck all day. They spend most of their time there, and to like have that feeling and that pressure of like, and I've had to terminate people after, you know, several conversations and people just weren't the right fit or whatever. And I'd always have conversations with people of like, if you want to keep doing this, you know, like we've had this conversation. These are the things you need to do. This is what I see that your strengths, and to look for something like this, you know, it's breaking it down, because like, and so many times I'd get messages later on, whether it was a couple weeks or several months or a couple years, somebody being like, thank you for that. I ended up going and leaving and finding my dream job. Or I've had several people that are like, I went out and I started a business and I'm doing this now and I love it.
Yeah. And it's a difficult conversation, but it's to be able to help someone through that time. It's not easy. It never gets easier. I don't ever walk into a conversation like that thinking like, oh, you know, what am I going to do later? Like I know the gravity of that. My one of my top strengths for StrengthsFinder is empathy, and that's never gone away, and that will never go away.
Yeah.
I always feel deeply for my team, for my visionaries, for my friends and family, for complete strangers. Like it doesn't matter. Like I have all the feels, and that's an important part. But again with. Going back to the 2016 meeting is when I learned about the people analyzer. So if you are empathetic and you've made some not great people decisions in your own business, or you have a difficult time knowing when to pull the plug or when to terminate someone, and you just keep giving people more and more chances, look up the people analyzer in the world of EOS. It is a powerful tool, and it helped me. Like I had thankfully learned it the hard way a few years prior to that, but it really helps you understand who needs to be in your company. It's having the right people, which means they're a core values match for your organization, and that they're in the right seat, which means, again, going back to that accountability chart I mentioned, that they are in the right seat. They're passionate about doing that thing, and they are the ones that can fulfill those roles and responsibilities.
When I see it it's like so clear how many companies are out there. One, they have people in the wrong seat, but then the lines are so blurred. You talk about like the top 5 responsibilities, right? Like the visionary is going and doing stuff that he has a sign for people to do, and then they go to do it, and you know, and it's like just nobody's doing their defined thing, or they're blurring their lines. Yeah,
I see that all the time. And I saw it in some of my earlier companies where I was the founder, the visionary, and the companies in early stages tend to develop this really wide and flat structure where you have like the visionary sitting in the top seat, and then you have like 20 people reporting to them because they don't quite know yet how the departments are going to shake out. And then sometimes on accident, sometimes on purpose, you start recognizing, oh, there's these key functions in a business. EOS is brilliant because it just teaches you all that off the bat. And you understand, oh, this is why it feels like that. It's because I have 20 people as reporting to me as the visionary, and I don't have any time to think and do the things that I'm great at because all of these people need things from me. So it forces you to think about, what does the ideal company structure look like? And then coming up with that, and then making sure that each of these roles and responsibilities are clear, because nothing's worse than when, going back to like, people just want to know what success looks like. They want to know they're doing a good job. And that means you have to explain what a good job looks like.
Yep.
Not just like, yep, you're in the seat. Good luck.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
want to show up every day wondering if they're sucking or winning.
Well, sales is a big one there, where it's like people will hire people because they're nice or whatever, and then they have the empathy and they kind of keep them around. And I had a client once, they hired me, or they brought me on because they're like, we've had this salesperson we've had on the team for 2 years, and they never sold anything, and we want you to help her. And I'm like, great, what if I can't help her? Like,
Right.
what if it's not her?
Yeah.
Because you look at it, she's probably on the right seat if it's been 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's empowering people to be successful in their role is what you can do. You can coach and develop, but there is a certain element of like, okay, you've got to, pull up your britches and just get this work done to be successful in a role. I think it's important that leaders take time to develop and coach and mentor those that are coming up so that they understand. And sometimes people get put into positions without a clear vision of what they're going to be responsible for. Did they have clear roles like before you came on board? They may have thought they were doing a good job, or because they have great relationships with clients that are existing, but they just don't like picking up the phone and dialing, whatever it is. So the clarity that comes with defining those things there's no replacement for that.
Yeah, because going back to that, if that person is really good with the relationships they have, they feel like they're doing a really good job because they have these relationships. But if their job is to make cold calls, they're not doing a good job, right?
Yeah. Yep. You have to have the right person in that seat. It's a difficult job, but I know people that absolutely love that. They go after the numbers. You see their eyes light up. They're like, I'm going to slay that list today.
Yeah.
And they go after it. That's not every person. So it's, again, like making sure you have the right person, which is the core values part, and that they're in the right seat, which means that they can actually do that work, and they want to do that work, and they have the capacity to do that work.
I think for the visionary, it can get hard to fathom that there's actually people that want to go do that work, or that it excites them. Like for you, for example, like being the integrator, the visionary gets exhausted doing the things that you're doing. And so to think that there's somebody like you that gets lit up and energized by doing those things, it's got to feel like there's nobody out there like that.
Right. That's crazy. Who would want to do that? Who would want to do that? Right. That's a great great point to make. It's a counterpart. It's a duo that's so important. And a lot of companies have this with maybe not even running on EOS. Like there's one person that's naturally more oriented to coming up with ideas. And another person that's good at execution and coming up with the strategy behind it. That's the visionary integrator relationship.
I think of like Apple is the one that comes out of my mind with like Steve Jobs and with Wozniak or whatever is the other guy. And then Steve Jobs gets kicked out of the company and it just goes downhill because he was the idea guy, right? He wasn't the guy implementing it or integrating it, putting it into place, but he was the guy coming up with all the ideas. And then he left and created a bunch of other ideas and then came back.
It's like, come back. Don't leave. Yeah. Most companies have a visionary and an integrator at the helm, even if they're using different names. The successful companies have those.
What do you see in that integrator role in like a full-time job? What is their title usually in that company, or their title in the company?
It actually has a wide span of titles, everything from integrator to COO. You'll have president, CEO sometimes. So one of my clients in Florida, he's the CEO because he's sitting in that seat. There's still a visionary, but he's the face of the company. He's the one that's running it on the day to day. So it's the internal language that we use. We talk about things in terms of function. So if you look at the accountability chart, we're calling out what the function is, not what the title is. So you could be you might be known as the integrator internally. That's your function, is to integrate all the major functions of the business. And then you have your external title. I might be, the COO. I might be VP of Ops. That one I see less, but it's anywhere from COO, CEO, president. But the integrator is the function that we serve in the company.
What does that growth look like from you from when you started in 2018 to, what you're doing now?
I never expected or anticipated what this would grow into,
Yeah.
but it's pretty cool. In 2018, so I had started working with clients, and Rick and I started recognizing that there were so many visionaries that needed an integrator. It wasn't just going to be he and I that were going to be able to help folks. So we thought about how can we multiply ourselves through others. And he initially started off with his vision, which was helping 50 visionaries build a business that runs itself. So 50. When he and I joined forces and we started thinking about okay, what's possible? How many visionaries could we help over the next 10 years? And we said 500. Let's just add a zero, right? And when we did that, then it forces you to think, well, what does that look like? 50, he could probably do on his own.
Mm-hmm.
500, he and I would not be able to do. So that meant multiplying ourselves through others, which meant that we'd have to come up with a repeatable way of doing things. So we came up with a proven process of how we engage with our clients, all the way down to working ourselves out of a job. And then we had to find people to teach that to. And really, what we teach is not EOS. So there's our counterparts, and I want to mention this. This is an important part. We don't teach EOS. We're there to roll up our sleeves and get the work done on the week-to-week basis with our clients. Implementers, EOS implementers, are the amazing folks that actually teach EOS and help you run on it. And then we come on board at that point and actually get in the business with you and help start doing these things, right? We're practitioners. We're there to model what it looks like to really run on EOS. So we're creating people that will step into companies alongside a visionary and help run that company on EOS. So that's everything from, overseeing the leadership team, putting processes in place, making sure that we have a clear picture of what success looks like, the right measurables, like we can just take a pulse on the business on a week-to-week basis and make sure we're heading in the right direction. We're getting our quarterly objectives done, which we call rocks, all of those things. So we wanted to be able to empower other integrators to step into that role and serve more than one visionary at the same time. It's not an easy thing to do. The way that we step into that role, we fully own that integrator seat. There is nothing part-time or lightweight about this. We 100% GWC that integrator seat. So we attracted other people that also came from that integrator background and we wanted to help them build their own fractional practice. And that was the birth of True Fractional Integrators.
Which, by the way,
there you go.
you guys have all seen it several times in the Coffee and Grit. Kara and Mike Anger, who are part of True Fi, gifted this to me a few months ago. So.
Yes. Yep. And we just celebrated our 6-year anniversary. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Time just is flying by. So that we co-founded that in 2018. And we've got a community of 12 amazing integrators that serve visionaries across the country. And they all follow the same proven process because we figured out what works. Rick came from a background where he was an integrator in a company with Gino Wickman as his implementer. So he had that experience. He taught me everything I knew about EOS at that point. I mentored under him. And then we've gone on, and that mentoring and coaching part is so important for us because each one of us, that's been a huge part of our journey to getting to where we are. And if we wanted to help 500 visionaries, we were going to have to do a lot more of that. So that was where True FI was born.
It's so cool because when you started telling this, I thought of you meeting Rick and Rick helping you get to here and then turning it around and paying it forward.
Yeah. And that's it. It's the thing too, that I didn't recognize that early on. I recognized it, but I think I appreciate it a lot more now, is the integrator position in a company, that seat can be a lonely place to sit because you are the person that's going to be pushing back on things and having difficult conversations,
Poking the holes,
crushing the dreams. But all out of a place of love and care and concern, because we're doing what's right for the greater good of the company. And someone has to do that. Someone has to have their eyes on that. And that's not always easy. So the coaching and mentoring part of it extends way beyond just helping someone build a fractional practice, right? So we've stayed small intentionally. We wanted to make sure we have the highest quality integrators. And there's such a I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have a coach or a mentor in whatever you're doing. I was listening to one of your podcasts last week about a younger guy. I think he was 17, and he hired a coach. And I told my husband,
Lincoln Brown. Yeah.
I told Sergio, I'm like, man, I can't imagine being 17 and having the foresight to say, like, I'm going to hire a coach. I want to go do that thing, so I'm going to hire a coach to get a shortcut.
His girlfriend's like, you're crazy. You're I think he spent like $1,500 or something. Like, just 17. He's like, I've got to learn somehow.
Yep. Like, and he said he made it back in 2 days or two transactions or something. Yeah. So brilliant. And
that kid's going to kill it.
Yeah, he absolutely will. Because why learn everything? Why reinvent the wheel? Why try to do it on your own? Why try to, and there is a stubbornness or a sense of pride that some people have, including me.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, no, I can figure it out. Let me do it. Even if I mess up, I want to take this route. I'm going to take the scenic route. You can get a coach or a mentor they're not going to give you all the answers. They're just going to help guide you and help shorten that learning curve. And that's what I see with integrators now. That's something else that I'm incredibly passionate about. I started sensing that as I was coaching and mentoring other integrators into this fractional world. But there's such a need just in general. When I look at integrators and companies across the world, it's such a difficult position to be in. Also incredibly rewarding, but it's so complex, and they're depending on what industry you're in and how big of a team and all of these things. The beautiful thing is all of them share this common trait that they have EOS as the framework, which is amazing news, because you don't have to figure out how you're going to do all these different things.
Yeah.
Your business can still be uniquely your business, but you don't have to figure out how to build. You don't have to build a better mousetrap. Like, you've already got it. So I love coaching integrators, either alongside them in the business. Sometimes I actually sit in that integrator seat and they're there with me, just learning by observation and then eventually transitioning into that seat. Sometimes it's just mentoring one-on-one, where on a weekly basis, I'm touching base with them and helping them make strides in that business every single week as if I was working with them. And then doing small group coaching where it's very important to have peers around you. I think in any position that you're in, that know what the struggle is, that know what the challenges are, that can say, hey, I was there. Let me share some of my experience with this. And that's where that small group coaching that's near and dear to my heart, and helping integrators become stronger in their roles is incredibly rewarding, because it impacts that visionary.
Yeah.
That visionary sees that difference week to week, and then quarter by quarter, you start seeing the impact in the company, and that integrator just shows up different. And that took me a while, going through my own mentoring and coaching with Rick. It took me a while for it all to click and to get it. So I can't state that enough, in case you can't tell. I'm passionate about that.
Well, and it's huge. And, and Mike Anger is a good example, because I started working with him with a client when he first started, right? Brand new, figuring it out. And then I worked with him for a year, and like that difference in his growth was incredible, the coaching and the experience and figuring out his voice with the vehicle, right? You have the mousetrap, but then figuring out his voice and his experiences and what he brings to the table. Yeah. And just watching it all come along was awesome.
Yeah. And that's a great point too, is sometimes people might say, well, I don't want to run on something like EOS. It stifles my creativity. I don't want to lose my company's soul. And it's the opposite. This just takes care of all of the noise that you would normally have to be figuring out. You'd have to build all of this from scratch. You just put it in place, and it's holistic. It all works well together, and it frees you up to be who you want to be as the visionary. It doesn't stifle you; it frees you up, and that's like it's such an important point to make. And as the integrator, you're showing up, you're stepping into that role uniquely you. You've got your own experience, you've got your own education, your background, your personality, your leadership style. It doesn't change how you show up.
Yeah.
You just get the benefit of having this amazing tool set and this wonderful community to be part of, where you can lean on peers for advice. And it's powerful.
It's powerful. It's powerful, and I love what you said about like it doesn't mean that you don't have, it doesn't take away from the soul. And I think especially if you have a soul, if you have a beautiful soul, it strengthens it, because you could have all the best intentions to take care of your people and to hear them, but with this structure, with the meeting structure, it really opens up and allows people to have a voice to be able to communicate what they see, for example.
Yes.
Because the visionary, especially as the company is growing, is up here. They may not see what this person sees. So for them to be able to be comfortable and have that conversation, if an entrepreneur up here doesn't have a soul and doesn't care, the system itself, the structure doesn't really help that.
No.
It doesn't really create a good culture.
Yeah. And you need a willing visionary. You need someone that's committed to it, because there will be people that push back and say, we don't need this. We've always done it this way.
Yep.
We call that a sacred cow.
Yes.
Guess what? We're going to go there. We're going to talk about it. Just because we've been doing it that way doesn't mean it's the best thing for us. And we need to look at, how to do things differently. So but the willing visionary, that's my ideal client, is someone they're frustrated, but they have a good heart. They love their team, and they're willing to do what it takes to take the company to the next level.
And when you get to do that every day,
yes, it's a good day. It is a good
day.
It is. Yeah, even through the ups and downs, that's like every company. I just think back to COVID, like the unexpected things that happen, and like what's the new rule for this week, having to pivot and change. Yeah. I'll tell you what, that's a lot easier if you have a solid operating system like EOS.
Yeah.
So
when you've got to pivot and change, if you're meeting together and having productive meetings, when you're talking and bringing your issues to the table and discussing them, solving them.
Yeah.
It sure is a lot quicker to move, I'm sure, than we're going to meet about that again next month.
Right. Circle back with you.
And then our meetings aren't effective. So when you meet next month, nothing's going to be done.
Yeah.
And we're going to be restarting over again.
Yeah. And I love that the system just really encompasses all of that. Like having effective meetings that you are excited to attend because you're actually going to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And you honor your commitments to each other, and you're able to have difficult conversations because that's the expectations that you've put on each other. Like you're all rooting for the greater good of the company. You're rowing in the same direction. And if you notice someone's going off course, you're just going to say, hey, and let's talk about it. What's going on? And not be afraid to have those conversations.
And it's exciting. Like it is an attractor. In going back to Populous, I remember going to a sales meeting with Danny, and he had brought one of the area managers with them. And this guy was like, everybody was raving about him, and the area manager, and he was newer though. He had been there for a couple months, and afterwards, me and Danny were debriefing, and Kevin joined us, and we were talking. And I was making a point to Danny that to be more confident around his presentation point around the core values and how to relate that in the experience of what you guys are doing in the company and how that really makes a difference. Like really attaching that. And Kevin was like, yeah, like I joined this company because you guys had EOS. Like I'm looking to further my career. And so when a company thinks like this and they have this kind of structure, I'm going to learn and grow. It's only going to help me. And that's why I chose you guys.
Yeah, it's so true. And I hear that a lot. It's like, first of all, with core values, they're designed to either attract you or repel you.
Yes.
And that's something where people are like, oh, I don't want to repel anyone, not in this job market. No. Do you really want to bring the wrong person on board? Do you want to have weak and wishy-washy core values just because you're afraid you might turn someone off?
Yeah.
You want raving fans. You want people that are going to be excited to be at work, that are going to love what they do and that are surrounded by other people with those same values. Like you can't be wishy-washy about that.
Yeah.
And this, with as far as running on EOS, like it helps cut through that whole thing of knowing what your job is, because one of the foundational tools in EOS is that accountability chart, so that everybody knows the seat that they're in, what they're responsible for. If every company just had that, like think about the impact that would have on culture, on clarity, like people understanding what they're supposed to be doing, what success looks like. The other key thing is that might scare, either will attract people or repel people, is the VTO, which is the Vision Traction Organizer. That's another foundational tool. And I use that all the time in interviews, especially for leadership team members, when I'm trying to find that next right fit person to lead a team in the company. I want them to understand what our vision is, not just what our goals are this quarter or what they've seen online or on LinkedIn. Like I want them to understand where our head's at, where the soul of the company is. Mm-hmm. And we cover all of these things. We cover the core values. We talk about what our core focus is. Like what is our purpose, our passion? What are we great at doing? How are we filling that need out in the world? And what's our 10-year target? 10 years from now, where do we see this company being? What will we have accomplished? Like we want them to either say, oh no, they sound like they're going to be working really hard. I want no part of that. And they'll self-select. The people that are motivated and inspired by that, those are the people that we want. So sharing that VTO so that they understand, where we're going this year, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, it's important to be able to share that. So it either attracts the right people or repels the ones that really aren't the right fit for us.
That attract and repel, and I love that because some people get afraid of that. And I have to share this story. So I'm part of this. I do part of this quarterly group. We meet quarterly. Kevin Sabosky. No, he's an EOS implementer, and he has these entrepreneur quarterlies that he does. And so it's like you can sign up and then do this quarterly and then, go through the quarterly stuff, hash through your core values and stuff like that. So I was going through my core values and reading them out and just like going through and strengthening them. And I was volunteered to like read them out loud. And one of my core values is eat faces. And I was explaining what that is, right? And it's one of those things that's going to attract or repel, like right away, And so the first person, and she was so like, choosing her words carefully. I knew there was going to be like but this is horrible. She's like, that's nice, Jason. I know you. You're great. Like if I met you in public, she's like, I've met you several times. I'd want to work with you. She was like, but if I heard that, I'd be repelled. And I'm like, awesome. And I'm like, and thank you. And I'm like, and no offense to her, like she's great, but you're not my client. And if that's something that does repel you, then we're not a good fit together. Right. And she was like, I can't imagine that, a lot of women would want to work with you with like that core value of eat faces. And I'm like, 80% of my clients are women. And I don't purposely go do that. Right. I don't go and say, I'm going to work with 80% women. It just is what attracts.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me this story. And it's I want to say it's probably the most memorable core value I think I've ever heard. I don't think I've ever had anyone else has eat faces as a core value. But that's great. It's who you are. And the story where that came from, like, is just, it's powerful. And that's what they should be.
Yeah.
So if someone is trying to come up with core values, don't make them be like honest, integrity, like no.
And that's what everybody was going through. And they were doing, and people were like, is that really you? And then the other thing is like, there's a lot of things that people will put to what they aspire to be, but not what they actually are.
Yes.
And then they beat themselves up because they're not reaching their own core values.
Am I a core values match? Minus. Okay, well, let's take a look at your core values because you're the CEO. We got to find the right core values. And it's every once in a while, you just have to take a look at them.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you brought up yours because it's a great reminder. Like, don't settle for wishy-washy.
And when I was sitting and down doing my core values, it was hard because I was taking my language away and I was like writing like, love or, like just an empathy and, these kind of things, which are traits of mine or values. But like I use these words all the time, eat faces, be the difference. And like those, there's specific terms to me. And I remember Kevin being like, can you hire or fire somebody from eat faces? And I'm like, absolutely. I know exactly the type of person I'm dealing with. Like, and I would interview people and like, if somebody is sitting and telling me and like, we're talking, but I can tell in their language that problems, they focus more on the problem than the solution. Things just always go wrong for them and it's somebody else's fault. It's not theirs. It's just little things. I can tell that very, very quickly. And it's like they're either eat faces mentality or they're not. They're getting faces eaten. Like they're one of these or one or the other. Right. And if I have somebody in my organization that's like constantly like, oh, I couldn't do it because this happened or this happened or this happened or this happened, we're probably not a good fit.
Yeah, that's a great, and that's the true measure of it. If you have the right core values, you should be able to ask yourself either during the interview process or, maybe you're checking in with someone every quarter, or even if something comes up and you just want to say like, hey, are they the right person for my organization? If you can't see your core value in action, you're going to have a really hard time. They're not useful. Yeah. You need useful core values so that you're able to say, all right, is this person more often than not showing up, living this core value? Or most of the time they're not living this core value. Yeah. You need it that clear. So putting like behaviors with it, like you just gave great examples of that. So powerful stuff, powerful reminders for that. And yeah, don't settle for those weak core values.
Weak core values.
Go for the strong ones that attract or repel.
Yep. I had this guy this time that he was like, sales contests, like we'd have vendors that would give bonuses to sell certain things. And this guy would never put his stuff in. And I'm like, what? First off, you're not making very much money, right? So you're not selling a lot, but when you are, like, you're not actually putting this in and making extra money that, why not? And he was like, well, I just figure like the more I put in, the more I'll be taxed. And I'm like, yeah, but you're going to be taxed on, like, you're still going to make more money than, I'm like, so if you won the lotto, and he's like, yeah, I'd just be taxed a bunch of money. I'm like, dude, you're not a like, you're constantly looking at the negative and they're like, how's somebody going to trap me, versus like, I'll take the $1 million. Like,
which one?
I didn't have this before. So if I've got to, I don't want to pay taxes, but I have to. And so if I have to, I'm going to give them my $400,000 or whatever it is.
Right. Let me keep the $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. But it's great just interesting. Yep. So we were talking about building others in being able to impact that 500 because you're impacting others in what is that leading to?
Yeah. Not 100% sure yet. We actually have our annual meeting coming up. So every year we take a look to see where we're at currently, how we've done over the past year, over the past quarter, and then resetting those expectations. Like, where are we going to be at 3 years from now? That helps us then put plans in place for this next year. So we'll have clear 1-year goals. We'll have a 3-year plan that we're going to shoot for. It's a picture. We're not 100% sure on all the numbers and stuff, but we'll have a good idea of what it's supposed to look like, and then that takes us further to our 10-year plan. With what we're doing right now, we're still at 500 in terms of number of visionaries we want to help. I suspect, just have a little nagging feeling, or not nagging, a good feeling that we're probably going to go to 5,000. Yeah. Because of the impact that we're having just in terms of coaching, in terms of how we're helping integrators, and how we're serving visionaries. Like, at the end of the day, that's all we're doing is helping visionaries. It's either by serving as their fractional integrator on an interim basis, so working ourselves out of a job, or by coaching integrators so that there are more of us that are fully equipped to help more visionaries. So at the end of the day, we can tie each one of those to a visionary being helped. That's why I see it going to 5,000. That's my gut feel, and I think that's a beautiful direction to go in, because every integrator that shows up for their role stronger and more confident and more experienced at being like this practitioner of EOS, like the better off that visionary is going to be, the better off that company is going to be. Each of their leadership teams, their families, the employees, like it spreads like wildfire, which is what I love about it.
So you met Rick. How does somebody, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, I think I might be an integrator, like, how do they start that?
Number one thing is read Rocket Fuel, read Traction. And being an integrator, there's something that is a common trend between all of the people that we work with. Like, so everyone in True FI, all of the integrators we coach, they have integrator DNA. You can't fake it. And it's funny, like some people might think like, oh, I'm an integrator, and they read the book. They're like, I'm not an integrator. It's like that attract and repel again. They're just like, I couldn't imagine doing that on a daily basis. No, thank you. Other people will read it and recognize that they are an integrator. They have that integrator DNA, right? It's one thing to say, I am an integrator. It's another thing to say, I have integrator DNA. There's a journey to becoming that full-fledged integrator. And there are a ton of resources out there for that. A lot of it is just your own experience that you bring to the table. And then you're becoming a master at EOS alongside that. So that when you do finally show up as that integrator, you're using every part of your experience, your personality, your leadership styles, your experiences, your business acumen. You've probably bought businesses, sold businesses, built businesses from the ground up sometimes, or you've been a COO in a company. We see a broad variety of people recognize themselves as that. And some will say, no, that's not really me. I couldn't imagine just doing that. Other people don't want the difficult conversations, or they may not have a broad enough business experience yet, right? So sometimes the best advice is go work in a company that runs on EOS while you're getting the reps in, while you're learning all of these things about EOS and putting them to use with your own team in a company. So there's a lot of different ways of getting there. I love cheering people on that journey because it has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And 5 years from now, if you want to be in a full-fledged integrator role, like 5 years goes by so quick, so it's never too late to start. I mean, I learned about it in 2016.
Yeah.
And I'm still grateful every day, and because it was life-changing.
Obviously, and I can see your eyes lit up doing it. And then, every time I talk to you, like, oh my God, this has changed. And we're doing this. And
yes. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that have changed. The other thing too, that kind of came on my scene last year, we used to live in the Milford, New Hudson area.
Yep.
And last year we moved, and we had been looking for a house. So quick backstory on this. We'd been looking for a house for 4 years. I mean, and we put offers in on 2 different houses that were close, but not quite. And both of them ended up falling through, and we weren't sad. It was really just, we wanted to find that next place to land. And it was November 22. And Sergio, my husband, sent me a Zillow listing, and I saw the pictures. And we had a pretty complicated list of things that we wanted in a house. And the house checked all the boxes. And then, only then, after I had fallen in love with the pictures, did I see where it was at. Seriously, I was like, oh my gosh, let's go take a look at this. Where is this at, by the way? And
it's like one of those things, like, how did you choose to live here? The house, completely.
Yes. Yeah, it was totally the house. It was totally the house and the property. It's on 6 acres. It has the 3-car garage, but fits 4 cars. So lots of space to work. It has a heated floor. I should mention that I like cars, so that makes sense to anyone else that's listening to this. And it's like, why is she so excited about the garage? I love working on cars, and they're classic cars and sports cars. They're my hobby. So having this, big garage, big property, beautiful pond, the house was everything we wanted. And then I realized it's in Birch Run, which is what's known for outlet mall shopping,
Yeah.
And let's see, Tony's.
I was going to say, and Tony's, the place that serves enormous amounts of food.
Yes. Where if you order a side of bacon, it is not exaggerating. It is this high off the table.
Yeah.
And it was always a place we stopped at when we would go up north.
Me too. Yeah.
It was just, so we knew it as that. I thought, what do people in Birch Run do? Like, do people live there? So it's just so funny now that's where we live and it's our home and it's an amazing city. We've made great friends. We belong to the Flint Genesee Chamber now, which has been fantastic. But in buying that house, that was another one of those unexpected turns on our journey. And I looked at it like, well, it's crazy that it's in Birch Run, but my family is here in the Detroit area, and my husband's father lives up in Bay City.
Okay. Oh, yeah, nice.
And he wanted to be able to spend more time with him. So he didn't really know his dad growing up, and met him when he was 17. And, that's heartbreaking for me to think of like him going all those years and not knowing his dad. And this was a cool opportunity to be closer and spend time together and, work on that relationship, which had been strained at times. So it felt perfect. It felt like absolutely the place we needed to go. And that was in November of 22. We moved in there in February of 23. And the month before we moved in, we found out that his father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, which was an absolute gut punch. And that was like days after we got engaged. So 2023, I'm glad that's over. But I was thinking about that the other day, and there's so many amazing moments that happened. Like, we moved into our home, we made amazing friends, we got married, like all of these great things. And then there's the things that happen.
Yeah.
That no matter what you do, you can claw and fight against it. There's the horrible stuff that happens in life.
Yep.
And you have to hold those in the same space. Otherwise, you go crazy.
Yep.
You can't just ignore one and only focus on the other. So we moved into the house in February. He was able to spend a ton of time with him that summer. We got married in September, and then he passed away. His father passed away 6 days after we got married. So it was gut-wrenching, to say the least, but he was very, very sick at the end. So he couldn't make it to our wedding. Thank goodness for Zoom. He got to at least see it on Zoom, but that very next day we went up there. And as weird as this sounds, we had a beautiful time with him that Sunday and that Tuesday. We spent 2 days up there with him. And you could tell he was ready. And we listened to music together, and we told stories, and he got to see Mr. and Mrs. Reyes. And then that Friday night, he passed away. And, we made this move away from everybody that we knew to have a closer relationship with him. But God's timing was perfect. We were exactly where we needed to be at. And it was I never thought of moving to Birch Run or moving up here more, but to be close to him and to be with the family during that time, to see my husband and his father have a good relationship. We never would have thought he'd be gone. So it was
just a divine timing.
It is divine timing. It always is.
Yeah. And that's following your path. Like, looking at 2016 and being like, rough. Yeah. 2017, but it really had a plan.
Yeah. And you don't ever know what that next curve is going to be. So that was a big loss. That whole year was hard, simultaneously, like the move, being away from the people that we knew and what was comfortable for us. And then seeing my father-in-law really suffer. I mean, I've not been close to anyone that has gone through cancer, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to stop time. Like, when it's your time to go, it's your time to go, except to make peace and enjoy every moment. And that's something I literally, when I get out of bed in the morning and I put my feet on the ground, I thank God for me waking up another day.
Yeah. Yeah.
They may not be here tomorrow. So whatever I do today, like it better be the best I can do, and I better be enjoying it and be grateful for it. With to this, as we were getting ready for this wedding, which we were going to get married this spring. I forgot this part. We were going to get married in spring of 2024, but recognized that we had to accelerate our plans because we knew we were going to lose him sooner. So we planned our wedding in 27 days.
Oh my God.
Yes. If you want a wedding planned in 27 days, an integrator.
I was going to say you're in the right hands.
Yes. And it wasn't even as stressful as I thought it would be, but we had a DJ and a bartender and a tent and like all of the things. We had 50 or 60 people.
You have a phenomenal property to have the wedding on.
And it was we're blessed with a great property. So we didn't have to find a place. We did it on our property and down by the pond and it was beautiful. But in doing that, we also had to prep our house to host guests from Chicago and from Texas because, you think, well, we can do a wedding short notice. We'll invite everybody up. We already had reserved things. And then we realized that it's the Frankenmuth Auto Show that same weekend, which is like the biggest event. And every single hotel room is either booked or $500 a night for like a queen bed. We ran into issues with that. So my husband was able to round up the right beds, the bed frames, the bedding, all of the things to make the home ready. Cause it's a 5-bedroom home that it's just the two of us. We didn't prepare everything.
Beds in every room.
Yep. So we planned a wedding and completely furnished our house within 27 days. No stress there at all. And it was kind of fun doing it. I think we were both welcomed the distraction a little bit.
Yeah.
And again, I thrive on chaos. I like calming that stuff down. So everything fell into place. Everything went beautiful on our wedding day. And now we had this fully equipped house. So when we lost my father-in-law, which again, we knew that was coming. We were prepared, but at the same time, it still hurts.
Yeah.
And sometimes when things hurt and you don't want to face them head on, you find things to distract yourself. And some people choose addiction. Some people choose, to throw themselves into work. We decided to list our house on Airbnb, which sounds crazy, but makes total sense in my head.
Yeah.
And we had been thinking about it since I was little. Like I was always renting out areas in my mom's house to other kids in the neighborhood for things like we'd have, we'd set up like a fair, or we'd have like a play and different things. So it was natural for me to
you were renting out the space.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I would have them come over and like we'd put on a show or something, or we'd have like a science lab that they could. Just all kinds of things.
The early childhood of a young entrepreneur.
Yes, yeah. It was definitely never a dull moment. Thank you, Mom, for putting up with that. And she was great. She had the patience of a saint. Has the patience of a saint still. So we leaned into that weekend because we didn't know what to do with ourselves. Right? It just we felt the loss. We were distracting ourselves. We had talked about doing this before. So it we didn't just come up with it that weekend. We had talked about it and we looked around and said, why not? That includes having a session room set up. So like a conference area downstairs in the lower level. I always wanted one. That's, I'm impressed with this space here and how intentional it is. I wanted to build something like that too. Both to use in my own business, but I also envisioned other people being able to use it. And that's exactly what we built. And it started with that day. And it started off with having families or groups of friends coming there and staying. And I think we've had 25 or 30 guests, like different weeks and weekends where people have stayed. And we've, knock on wood, have maintained a 5-star perfect rating with the property. Awesome. And we currently list as one in the top 1% of homes on Airbnb.
Wow.
Because my husband is the host with the most. He, like no other, he goes above and beyond to create a beautiful experience for our guests. And his touches are all around the house. Like everything is just so designed for the guests. So very lucky woman to have that in my life.
It's so awesome. And like I said, we've talked on, he and I have connected and talked on Facebook and stuff like that. But meeting him, like the first thing I can feel is his big heart.
Yeah. Oh, he's got an amazing heart. Yeah, and you were pointing out we were somewhere like at Starbucks
in Milford, yeah.
And I said, or you said, there's a guy in the middle of the road picking something up, and I turned around, and I'm like, yeah, that's probably Sergio.
And it was.
It was because if he sees something, like he'll see a nail, he's like, I don't want someone to get a flat tire. He'll pull over, put his hazard lights on, and go get the piece of metal or whatever else has fallen off the back of someone's truck, because he doesn't want that, woman that's driving home at 11 o'clock at night from work to be stuck on the side of the road. And even to his own detriment, like he could be hit by a car.
Yeah.
And he's careful, thank goodness. But, he has a huge heart. He is absolutely a huge heart.
So awesome. The hostess with the mostest. I love that.
Yeah. And so that's how we ended up with an Airbnb. So, and it's been great. We love it. We absolutely love it. So it's for families coming in from out of town. We have guests from everything from Washington State, from Ohio, Missouri, even local. Like if they come up from the Detroit area, they're up here for a wedding. They'll just, stay the weekend at the house.
That's so cool. And and so when you were first telling me about it, I'm like, how fitting is it? Because with EOS and doing annuals, and annuals are usually in a random space, like a retreat play. It's like, that's so awesome. Now you can get people to just come there.
And that's part of the inspiration. All of it goes back to Populist. So Ruth Ann at Populist, her and I would talk, or actually she did it all. She would find these different houses.
Yeah.
And she'd say, which one do you think we should stay at? Because she's asking me, because I wanted to make sure there was space on the walls for those big Post-it notes so I could write things and keep a list going. And we would always look for these places, and there weren't very many of them on Airbnb or Vrbo. There weren't the size houses that we would need, or they weren't set up right. And I thought, man, it'd be amazing to have a place where business teams could just come and they could run their all-day planning session all day on, the first day. They could play a game of pool at night, go sit outside on the deck, watch the stars, have a bonfire, and then wake up in the morning and do the second day. So I wanted to create that session space. First of all, I don't run sessions there. I don't run sessions, period. I only did it for Populist because they had graduated from EOS. I think they've been on EOS now for 8 years.
Yeah.
So the first couple of years they worked with an implementer, and then they took over running their own quarterlies and annuals, which is why I was running them.
Because then the full-time integrator usually does that, right?
Yeah. Once they're graduated. Yep. And they have an amazing implementer now named Tiffany.
Oh, awesome.
So they're breaking that next ceiling and doing an amazing job at it. But building that space, keeping that memory in mind, like thinking about all the different houses we stayed at, like being able to sleep an entire leadership team, having enough different spaces where if I want to get up at 4 a.m. and journal, and someone else wants to stay up till midnight and, have some whiskey or whatever, they can. Like there's enough spaces there. And Sergio's made them all amazing spaces with unique feelings and different themes. So it's set up great. I'm really proud of how it turned out.
That's so awesome. So awesome. Mm-hmm. It's just the level of connection that will happen there, because I think of even just the one place, the experience I had at Populist, and just like the different level of relationship you build, sitting with Heather and McGlone and just like connecting. And then like that's carried over to our relationship that we still have right now,
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't get the opportunity to do that much in business. So being able just to connect with people, not in the office, and then facilitating a deeper connection, like asking questions so that people, like the team health exercises that we do, where we really got to know a lot more about each other and understand what drives us. And we just show up different when we're connected at that deeper level, and that trust is there. So I think teams being able to get away for something like that has a big impact on their overall team health and the sense of connection that they have.
Now, what were you talking? We were talking about the beginning. You were talking about like doing group coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yep, group coaching. because I only have so many days in a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
And the need is real.
If everybody's doing the math as we're listening to the story, you're busy.
I'm busy. And I like being busy.
Yeah.
I like having an impact. And I recognized probably 6 months ago that there was something next. And I didn't know what. And I remember having a conversation with people back in, I want to say like March. I was going into the EOS conference. And I remember thinking like, I don't know what this thing is, but like there's something. I just couldn't put my finger on it. And I usually don't know. And all of a sudden it starts to reveal itself to me. And there's so much good stuff going on with true integrators, true fractional integrators. But I'm like, I knew it was something else in addition to that. And in my roles, one of the things that I've recognized is that those integrators that are stepping into that role, even if they've been an integrator for a year or two, there's still so much learning, and there's still ways that I can help them shorten the learning curve, just because I've done it so much more with so many different visionaries, so many different companies, different industries. Why not put that experience to use? And my love of mentoring and coaching like just led me to that. And then I had a conversation with Deborah, an implementer in New Zealand. And she was talking about this need for integrator coaching. Like they're behind the US in terms of where they're at in their EOS growth cycle. And they're still early on. So they're still trying to build integrators. Whereas here we're more established and people have been in those roles now for 5 or 10 years, some 15 years. Helping her through that thought exercise and really thinking about what could that look like. That's when I realized like that's how I can help more people, is just by doing a small group, very intentional. It's honestly by referral or invitation only. Like it is not something that you can just sign up for.
Yeah.
Because I want to be that intentional. This is for integrators that are in companies that are already running on EOS and are working with an implementer. So they've had this guide on their journey already. Implementers do a great job of helping companies get up and running on EOS.
Yeah.
And that includes getting the integrator up to speed.
Defining their core values, setting
All
up the VTO.
Yep. They've taken them through. They've got a full-blown accountability chart. They've got their vision traction organizer, that guiding document that's really helping them stay on the path of what they want to accomplish. But there's so much more I can help them with, because the quarterly sessions are 13 weeks apart. We come into one quarterly session and we take a look back at the previous 90 days and we say, how did we do? How would we grade this? How do we think as a team that we did? How many of our rocks did we accomplish? So we're also setting the course for the next 90 days and tackling some of the biggest issues. Well, you walk out of that room at the end of that quarterly session, and that integrator is pretty much on their own until they step back into that room. And there are other resources out there, but there are integrators out there that just really want that consistent touch point. They want this culture of accountability that they can plug into, where this is designed to be small group, a peer group of 6 to 8 integrators, where we're meeting twice a month, plus a one-on-one coaching call for those things that you really just need to do a deep dive on. It's designed to be this accountability group. It's designed to learn more about how to be the best practitioner in that for your visionary and for that company that you can be, and all of the things that come with that. The tools are one thing.
Yeah.
Putting them into use is another. And I think so oftentimes people have the head knowledge of what the tools are and they've learned about them, but then actually putting them to use, that's where I can help them. Just like I help my clients by being the one that steps in and is the practitioner. It's helping these integrators fully wield those tools within the business and see the impact that it has. Like it's almost like living vicariously through the integrator, because you get to see the impact that it has on the company and on their visionary integrator relationship and on their bottom line and on, they're making some difficult people moves and all of those things. And I love being part of that journey because it's scary when you have to go it alone. And how many times might someone say, I just don't know how I'm going to do this. And they end up getting stuck there for a quarter or 2 or 3. Well, why get stuck? Why not have people that you can really lean on and challenge the way that you're thinking about it and ask questions and help you walk through that together. So this isn't like giving someone all the answers. This is being that coach and mentor, just like I've received, just like how impactful that's been on my journey. I want to give that back to others too. And in that peer group, they're learning how to coach each other as well. And then they're going to go do that to their leadership teams.
Yeah.
And their leaders are going to do it for their teams. Like that's what I want to do.
One of the things, and it just made me think of this as you're saying that me and Mike Eller had talked about in his episodes, he talked about like the impact of impacting someone's day, like an employee on the team or whatnot. But I'm sitting and thinking about the quantum impact that you're making when you're impacting and elevating integrators who are then impacting and elevating visionaries of companies. And you talk about like even just 500 entrepreneurs, 500 visionaries, right? Like how many people is that impacting? Because you have companies probably, what's the smallest amount of people, the employees that you have on?
30 at the smallest, 200 plus at the largest.
Yeah. Like do you think that level of impact is, have you thought of that?
Yes. And I love that. That's that where I just think of, touching that, having that impact on that visionary, the leadership team. It's like these concentric circles, and then it's like like wildfire, or almost like the neurons in your brain when they fire and everything lights up. To me, I love that impact of it. And each one of those people has that impact on their teams, can have that impact. And that's my desire is to help them coach and develop them so they can have that impact. Because at the end of the day, that feels amazing.
It feels amazing. And just think about like being an employee of a company and being an employee of like a Populous, for example, where you saw people that had so much joy going to work, and a lot of them, and they wasn't lost on them. They're doing jobs, they're cleaning toilets, they're cleaning, right? They're not doing jobs that are seen as glamorous, but then like being on their monthly calls and having so many people that were so grateful and thankful for being there or for working there and having the opportunity that they had and having the opportunity to work for Mike and that leadership team.
Yes.
And then when they go home and they're in an elevated mood because, like then they have their spouse, their kids, the people that they impact and touch on a day that because they're in an elevated mood. You know what I mean? Like just that chain of how much impact that makes.
It is. And I love thinking of that. It's so incredibly powerful. And it goes back to those core values. It goes back to having that, what's the mission that the company's trying to accomplish? And you can never truly see the impact, but you can imagine what that looks like.
It's killer.
Yeah, that is.
So it's one of those things of like, I can't believe we let it be 2 years before you were on, but sometimes things always work out for a reason, right? Because it's more to the journey, more to the story, and hearing the story about your father-in-law and how none of that stuff happened when we first had our conversation at Starbucks, and
that didn't happen. We were still living in Milford. We weren't married yet. Like we had so much has changed in that time.
It's like your story's
amazing.
by far not complete, but it's like completing some of that journey. Right. And
it is. And it's, a week ago, or like probably even this morning, like, what am I going to talk about? There's nothing really going on. And I know there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot going on, and it's not always the glamorous stuff. And sometimes it's hard and difficult. But it's life. And I think just being really intentional about it and enjoying the moments as they come, like stopping and smelling the roses. I don't like roses because they always die on me, but I have beautiful wildflowers, and I stop and I get out of the car and I look at them and I take pictures of them. It's just, I want to appreciate those little things.
It's the little things. I told
It
somebody
is.
today, I'm like, is the number one sign that I'm getting older is if you see me stopping and taking pictures around town, I'm the guy taking pictures of trees. I'm like, all of a sudden I have appreciation for birds. I don't know what's going on.
Oh,
I'm
I
like
love
that.
birds.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I'm sure you have a ton, like,
Yes. I'm like, I don't even know what kind of bird that is. But
all of a
it's
sudden you're Googling it.
it's
But
fun. I have an app called Merlin. So if you like birds, Merlin is the app. It's amazing.
that is awesome. But it's like stopping and enjoying the little things to fill your bucket. And then I love, and we've talked about it in so many different stages, and we haven't even said the word itself, but with grief. Like grief for loss, good or bad, because like, you look at closing the business, and you talked about kind of going through these stages. And even though it ended up being a great thing for you, it's still a level of loss and a loss of identity and a shift. And we talked about the loss of your father-in-law, and and just like there's so many different ways that we experience grief. And you said it best at one point. You said, and you got to stop and acknowledge that too.
You have to. If you just try to bulldoze through it, it's not going away.
Yeah,
You're just bulldozing stuff over it. And then it's going to come back when you least expect it. And you'll feel it in your body, you'll feel it in your mind and your mood. So acknowledge it's okay to say that things suck. It's okay to be paralyzed with grief, and just acknowledge it and for what it is. It's not easy. But it doesn't help when you try to shove it down and ignore it. Like, it's going to come up one way or another.
yep,
And then just giving yourself enough grace to recognize that you need that downtime, or you need to be able to grieve, or maybe you need some time where you're going to just withdraw a little bit. It's okay. Like you deserve that. You can do that. Or, spend more time out if that's it, wherever you find that relief at. It's just do what feels right for you, but just don't blow past it.
And I think that's a huge message for the listeners, because you look at the entrepreneurs, the driven people. It's so easy to just jump in and do the things because that's how we you just jump in and you bury it, and you keep going and you keep moving, and it doesn't hit you until it hits you.
Yeah,
It hits you really hard.
And there's an amazing book called Shine by Gino Wickman.
Yep.
I don't know if you've had a chance to read it. I'm on my third or fourth pass of it now. Just there's great questions in there, but one of the biggest takeaways with that is that you can be driven and have peace.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely possible to do that.
Yep.
And that's hard. That's hard. And I'm not even a vision. I wouldn't even call myself a visionary. I'm an entrepreneur, but man, I went through that book and there's some hard hitting stuff in there that really helps me realize, like, wow, this explains a lot. And then here's the steps I can go through that helps me better understand myself and my life and how I show up.
I love how all the disciplines are integrated, and even like the what to say no and yes to. Yeah. If you're not thinking in that 10-year, if you don't know who you really are, it's going to be really hard to say, to define what you're saying no and yes to.
Yep. You want to hear something really horrible? I don't have my 10-year vision clear, which is discipline number 1. So
welcome to the 77%.
Oh my God. It's not for lack of trying. It's not for lack of trying or for lack of ideas. I just cannot, it's something I've struggled with forever.
Yeah.
And I knew this decades ago, and that I struggled with coming up with what that picture was. That's why I mentioned like that, recognizing that next turn in the road, like, oh, there's something here.
Yeah.
And thank God it's always worked out well, but it'd be really nice if I knew what the end goal was there. So Sergio and I are working on that and trying to get crystal clear on what our 10-year vision looks like, because you're right. It's what you compare everything to and say, is this moving us closer to that, or is that a shiny object that's going to distract us?
Well, and what's so crazy is thinking about it is like, think about the last 10 years and what you've accomplished. And most of the stuff that we've talked about in this conversation has fallen in that 10-year window.
Yes. And I wouldn't have known any of it.
Any of it.
It would have been so far off. So I think we just have to stick to the general things.
Yes. Yeah.
I know we want like a northern command and a southern command. Like we want to have a nice house in each of those, or cabin, even if it's, doesn't have to be big. We want to have an impact on people. how is that? Defining what that looks like. I'd really like to build and sell something. Don't know what that looks like. And sometimes that's fine. So that's as far as we've gotten with it. And maybe that's all it needs to be. But it's such a positively challenging book. I was going to say challenging, but it's positively challenging. It's really thought-provoking. So for entrepreneurs, visionaries, it just really helps you think through some of the things and helps you understand more about who you are. The fact that you are driven. And you can have peace. It's absolutely possible.
And so, like, for those that don't know, there's a 10% of the population that's actually clarified as driven. Like 10% of us in the world are driven, and 4% of those are entrepreneurs. So there's a whole 6% out there that are working in jobs and whatnot. But so there's Douglas Brackman, the book Driven, talks about the D2, D4 gene, and that there's a actual defect in the gene to where we don't feel like we're enough. And so it's constantly going and filling, and so the cool thing is that we have superpowers and that we can accomplish and take on loads and do things that other people can't do. It's superhuman strength. But then at the same time, we create a havoc for ourselves and others in the meantime.
Yeah. We don't always realize it, or we realize it too late.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's powerful. And self-awareness and just taking the time to really be honest with yourself, and then seek help or seek guidance and support. So important to have those friends around you.
Yeah.
And that's, again, something I love about the community is you're never alone. There's always someone you can call. I always like to say that it's the EOS community is more collaborative than even the craft beer industry, which is darn collaborative.
That's pretty collaborative.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it is. It's
yeah.
amazing. It's help first is one of their core values, and it's been nothing but. It's amazing.
I always love talking to my EOS friends right after the EOS conference because it's, there's a lot of high energy, a lot of collaborative conversations that have happened, and so there's a huge spark on it. I've had several people that have come on the podcast after the convention or after the conference. It's like, yes, let's go.
Yeah. Let's go.
Let's go. Dave Feidner was one of them. He came on right after,
Dave.
and Dave's awesome.
Yes,
he's
he
like, he's so Yoda, he's just so wise and
he is a true philosopher.
He's a true philosopher. I love listening to his stuff.
Yep, he is. I've had the privilege of working with him on several clients, and he's become a great friend and mentor and amazing guy.
Amazing guy. So you probably didn't expect me to spit out so much about Shine that I knew about.
I'm impressed.
I've actually been working with Gino and Rob on their group coaching, their program and stuff like that. And so we've been working together since beginning of the month, September. So end of August.
Okay. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's been awesome.
Both
it's phenomenal.
amazing guys. And I'm so grateful they put that together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Rob's fantastic.
Rob is another one of those Yoda Zen guys that when you talk to, Zen. I get so much out of him every time I'm not usually one to lack for words. I just but with Rob, I'll just I don't know, what do you think? And I'll sit there and listen to him and write down a bunch of notes. So
absolutely. Well, good for you. Can't wait to see that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So man, Christina, it's been so awesome. This has been
great.
Phenomenal
it's been
conversation.
A blast.
Thank you for coming all the way down from Birch Run.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Making the drive, and I'm so glad Sergio came too.
I'm glad you got to see him again.
Yeah, absolutely. Where he wasn't picking up stuff in the road. So.
Right, a much safer location.
A much safer location.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.